Welcome to another episode of Historical Markers. Today we're still going through the Chickamauga battlefield, and right now I'm standing in the Poe Road area. This particular marker behind me is on Poe Road, and I hope you have been enjoying this series. Like, subscribe, and let's see what else we can find in this battlefield area. Mix-up in the Union command. An unwise order created a perilous gap in the Union line. Shortly after 11 a.m. on September 20th, Major General William S. Rosecrans, the Union commander, received an erroneous report that Brigadier General John M. Brannan's division was out of position, which would have created a gap in the Union battle line. In fact, Brannan's men were concealed in the woods behind you, right where they should have been. Brannan's line is marked along this road today by monuments and cannon. In a move to close the supposed gap, Rosecrans dispatched an order to Brigadier General Thomas J. Wood to move to the left to support Major General Joseph J. Reynolds. Wood, who had been harshly reprimanded earlier that day for failing to obey orders, promptly did as he was commanded. The departure of Wood's division opened a real gap in the Union battle line about a quarter mile south of here, to your right. Meanwhile, Confederate Lieutenant General James Longstreet prepared a massive attack that would hit the Union line at that vulnerable point. So, that is to our right, and it is south. Still more cannons out here in this field. This is Battery D, 1st Michigan Light Artillery. It says this battery moved from the Dwyer Field at midnight and came into position on this ground about 9 a.m. in center of Brigade front line, and was in this position when the Confederate advance took place about 11 a.m. The enemy getting very near, the pieces were fired double-shotted with canister, checking him till 4 pieces were run to the rear 50 yards. 3 pieces were abandoned, and 3 were limbered up and moved to the hill in the northwest end of Dwyer Farm with the reserve artillery. The enemy pressing hard on front and right flank in this position. 2 more pieces were abandoned, and the remainder of the battery moved to the rear on the McFarland's Gap Road. Let's look at the other side of this monument here. Michigan, to her light Battery D, 1st Artillery. Connell's Brigade. Except the 38th Ohio, which was on detached service, this brigade was attacked here in front and on its right flank about 11 a.m. The 3 brigades in the line immediately on its right had been ordered to the support of the Union line still further to the left, and it was while the last of these was moving across the gap thus created that the Confederates delivered their attack. After a short but severe engagement with Hood's division, the brigade gave way and was forced to the rear in confusion, part rallying on Snodgrass Hill, the greater part going to Rossville. The battery lost 5 of its 6 guns. This is the 17th Ohio Infantry, Lieutenant Colonel Durbin Ward commanding, Connell's Brigade, Brannan's Division, 14th Army Corps. September 19, 1863, from about 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., the regiment was engaged on the right of Vanderveer's brigade about 1 mile east of the Lafayette Road and a few hundred yards south of the Reed's Bridge Road. September 20th was in the first line of battle in this position until about 12 midnight, when General Wood's division vacated the line on its right, then being assailed in front, and on its right flank was driven beyond the range of hills west of here and became separated from the left of the army. Later in the day, Lieutenant Colonel Ward was wounded. The command thereafter devolved on Major Butterfield. A detachment of the regiment rallied on Snodgrass Hill and fought till the Army retired at night. Lumsden's Alabama Battery. The battery was engaged on the 19th with the enemy losing one gun with a broken trail, but the gun was soon after retaken. On the 20th, the battery came into position on this ground near 5 p.m. and opened fire on the enemy, crossing the road near the Kelly House from the east to the west, continuing to fire till his line on the right was abandoned. Georgia 17th Infantry, Lieutenant Colonel Charles W. Matthews, Benning's Brigade, Law's Hood Division, noon, September 20th, 1863. We're out in the woods, so I'm guessing those other two are also probably Georgia. We'll see when we get down to them. Benning's Brigade. This brigade, being the right of the second line of the division, advanced about 11:15 a.m. from the low ground beyond the first crest east of this point and attacked Brannan's divisions, which was forced to the rear. The brigade, capturing 4 pieces of artillery, followed until its division was checked by a portion of Wood's troops formed on the high ground on the north end of Dyer Field. At that point, McLaw's division, which had followed in the track of Hood's, passed to the front and engaged Wood's line. Benning's brigade remained in the forest east of Dyer's Field. Georgia 20th Infantry, Colonel J.D. Waddell, Benning's Brigade, Law's Hood Division, noon, September 20th, 1863. Georgia 15th Infantry, Colonel Dudley Dubois, Major P.J. Shannon, Benning's Brigade, Law's Hood Division, noon, September 20th of 1863. Then here we have the Georgia's Havis Battery, Captain M. W. Havis, Robertson's Reserve Artillery, Army of Tennessee, noon, September 20th of 1863. Havis's Georgia Battery. The battery was not engaged on the 19th. Soon after noon of the 20th, it came into position on this ground and opened fire on the enemy, then falling back on Snodgrass Hill. About 5 o'clock p.m., the battery took position on left of Major Williams's battalion, in front of and west of this ground, and opened fire on the enemy's line east of the Kelly Field, taking it in reverse, and continued to fire till his line at that point was abandoned and the Confederate infantry line intervened. And here right next to the Poe Road is Tennessee 32nd Regiment Infantry, Brown's Brigade, Stewart's Division, 11:30 a.m., September 20th, 1863. Then right behind that is Georgia 26th Infantry, Lieutenant Colonel Shepard, Major Charlton, Benning's Brigade, Law's Hood Division, noon, September 20th, 1863. This marker is for Clayton's Brigade. About 11 o'clock, the brigade advanced with the rest of its division from its position beyond the first crest east of this tablet. Upon reaching the open ground, it was subjected to heavy fire of artillery and small arms and suffered severely. It, however, pushed on to the Lafayette Road, from which point it was compelled to withdraw by the troops of Brannan and Reynolds, posted behind field defenses and rails and stones. The brigade retired to the morning position and was not further engaged until the general advance shortly before sundown. Taken into action September 19th, 1,446 officers and men. And then this was the site of the Poe House. It was burned during the battle September 20th of 1863. And it's right here in the middle in this field. There's Poe Road behind me, and as I turn this way, that's Lafayette Road. Kolb's Alabama Battery. The battery crossed the Chickamauga with a battalion at Alexander's Bridge early in the morning of the 19th, was held as the reserve artillery of Buckner's Corps, and took position in rear of his line where the battery remained for several hours, occasionally under artillery fire but not engaged. About 11 a.m. of the 20th, the battery was ordered forward, taking several positions without becoming engaged. About 5 p.m., the battalion came into position on this ground under the direction of Major Porter, Chief of Artillery, and opened fire on the enemy who was crossing the road from east to west. The fire was kept up with effect till General Stewart's division advanced and closed in across the front when the battery ceased firing. Darden's Mississippi Battery. The battery crossed the Chickamauga with a battalion at Alexander's Bridge on the morning of the 19th, was held as the reserve artillery of Buckner's Corps, and took position in rear of his line where the battery remained most of the day, at times under heavy artillery fire but not engaged. On the morning of the 20th, near noon, the battery moved forward, taking several positions without firing till about 5 p.m., when by order of General Longstreet, under the direction of Major Porter, Buckner's Chief of Artillery, the battery was placed in position on this ground and opened fire on the enemy who was crossing the road from his left to his right, near the Kelly House, continuing the fire until General Stewart's division advanced beyond the battery front. As the division advanced, General Buckner conducted this battery to the Kelly field, where firing having ceased, it bivouacked. Georgia, Massenburg's Battery. Captain Massenburg, Robertson's Reserve Artillery, Army of Tennessee, noon, September 20th, 1863. Massenburg's Georgia Battery. The battery was not engaged on the 19th, but came into position on this ground soon after noon on the 20th and opened fire on the enemy, then falling back on Snodgrass Hill about 5 p.m. The battery again came into position on the left of Major Williams' battalion northwest of this ground and opened fire on the enemy's line east of the Kelly field, taking it in reverse and continuing to fire till his line on the right was abandoned and the Confederate infantry line intervened. Tennessee, 23rd Battalion, Brown's Brigade, Stewart's Division, 11:30 a.m., September 20th, 1863. Tennessee, 26th Regiment Infantry, Brown's Brigade, Stewart's Division, 11:30 a.m., September 20th, 1863. Indiana, 19th Battery, 2nd Brigade, 4th Division, 14th Corps, Saturday, September 19th, 1863, from 12 to 4 p.m. Law's Brigade. This brigade led its division as the second line of Longstreet's Corps. It moved about 11:15 a.m. from a line about 800 yards east of the Lafayette Road. Upon reaching the road, it inclined to the right and, followed by Benning's and Robertson's brigades, attacked the right of Brannan's division, forcing it to the rear. Upon entering the Dwyer Field, south of the blacksmith shop, it was attacked by Harker's Union Brigade and forced to the rear. McLaw's division then replaced Hood's at the front line, and the latter remained in the forest east of Dyer Field. Gracie's Brigade. Between 3 and 4 o'clock, the brigade, having been brought from the vicinity of Hall's Ford, was formed on this ground across the Lafayette Road, facing north, with Kelly's brigade in a second line and Trigg at Brotherton's supporting Williams' artillery. In this position, Gracie's command was subjected to a heavy artillery fire from Union batteries in the Kelly Field. At 4 p.m., the brigade was dispatched to Snodgrass Hill to the assistance of Kershaw's brigade, which had been assaulting that position since 1:30 p.m. Robertson's Brigade. This brigade, forming the second line of Hood's division, moved about 11:15 a.m. from the low ground beyond the first crest east of the Lafayette Road and inclining to the right, crossed the road, and its right took part in the attack upon the Union line, which was forced to the rear. It followed Law's brigade to the Dyer Field, moved to the right flank, and changed front advance to the top of the hill from which it drove the enemy. After holding the hill a few moments, a fire from the rear on both flanks forced it to retire. At this point, McLaw's division replaced it on the front line, and the brigade was ordered to remain in the forest east of Dyer Fields. Well, that was another episode from the Chickamauga National Park, and there is just so many markers in this park and so many areas you really need to come visit. I've got several more markers to find, and so just come along with me and we'll find more markers and see what else there is here to see.